Now you make the comedian in me nervous, you know. It's like, so anyway, hello. So happy to see you here. I am a Master Wildlife Conservationist. It's just a training you take with DEEP, and some pursue it beyond that, some don't, but I've way pursued beyond that because in my retirement I really feel a responsibility to our environment and our wildlife. I notice the attitudes of people towards animals are getting worse. You know, if a coyote goes in the back of your yard, a lot of people freak out, you know, when it's just going in the back of your yard doing nothing. So I like to clear up, you know, things about animals. But animals are animals. We're animals too, and we kill a lot of animals on the roadways. But anyway, thanks for coming. And, you know, I want to tell you that people like Kristen, and I'm sorry, your first name? Liz. They have a thankless job, so don't make it thankless. Their jobs are really hard. You know, they have to take care of everything that's flying, running, yapping, or whatever in the town, and they don't have enough of them. So, you know, always please try to make it easy on them. Have patience, because there may be situations that you're really frightened about, and they're going to be there, and they're going to give you the best advice, as well as the fur bearer people with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. They're really good friends of mine, and I can tell you they care a lot about the animals, but they get a lot of bad rap. So anyway, they're mostly having to be reactive to our bad habits, and we will talk about that. I'll try not to lecture too much, but when I give a talk about an animal species, I like to kind of go into its history and let you know about the species in general, and then as we go on, we'll funnel into, you know, how to manage bears and what to do. Not wrestle them, but anyway. So this is the most handsome bear I ever seen. If you older people will know, I named it Valentino, but anyway, I'm surrounded on 3 sides by People's State Forest, and so the bears and all animals tend to, especially in a summer like now where the streams are drying up, I'm pretty much close to the reservoirs, so they go from the forest to the reservoir, and it's kind of like a cow path. So I'm very lucky that I get photos as they go through my dirty windows most of the time. But anyway, so this is one that has come through. So this graphic obviously is probably from Aspen or somewhere, but it's pretty typical of where we are right now in Connecticut. Barry Lopez was a great nature essayist. Anybody ever read him? Arctic Dreams and stuff. He's really worth reading. He's deceased now, but a great nature writer. He said, "One of the great dreams of man must be to find some place between the extremes of nature and civilization where it is possible to live without regret." And that's where we are now in Connecticut. We're the 4th most fragmented state in the country per capita. That means broken up by roads and buildings. And they think since COVID, with all the new development, we're going to drop to number 2. So that prevents great challenges for our animals, for our people, for our state. We're just over 3 million acres, so we're not a huge state. So there's not a lot of the animals' corridors are cut up now. You know, they have to cross roads. Hey, even the hikers on the Appalachian Trail have to go over roads when they're in Connecticut. I mean, a quite significant amount of roads. So we do have a challenge. We have something between 60 and 80 bears a year killed by cars. So at nighttime, slow down. I've done my own experiments, and I pretty much think if you go no more than 45 and you're looking, you know, from, you know, here to the door, you can react usually if an animal comes out. Not the deer that just dart out all of a sudden, or, you know, there are some animals that just dart out, but you can see them most of the time. So John Muir was a Scotsman who came out and met Teddy Roosevelt, and he helped create our national park system. He was out in the Sierras, and he said, "In my first interview with the Sierra bear, we were frightened and embarrassed, both of us, but the bear's behavior was better than mine. After studying his appearance as he stood at rest, I rushed towards him to frighten him," and don't do that, "that I might study his gait and running. But contrary to all I had heard about the shyness of bears, he did not run at all. When I stopped short within a few steps of him, as he held his ground in a fighting attitude, my mistake was monstrously plain. I was then put on my good behavior and never afterward forgot the right manners of the wilderness." And animals and people, it's all about boundaries. You know, even with people, you know, during COVID, we had to stay at least 6 foot apart. You know, I have a friend who always, when she was making a point, she went like this, you know what I'm saying? So you have to have boundaries, and boundaries are important, particularly with bears. When a black bear stands up, it's not a threatening posture. They're standing up to kind of get a look at things. They're curious, very curious animals. If a grizzly stands up, that's a different story. So anyway, there's 8 species of bears in the world, and only 2 of these species, the black bear and the grizzly, have a stable population worldwide. Black bears are only in North America. Brown bears are the most widespread of all bear species. They're in Asia, they're in Europe, Middle East, and Alaska, so they are pretty widespread. There's about 200,000 of them. Of course, they're facing all kinds of threats too. And their status, conservation status, is of least concern, but because all their habitats are changing, that will affect their numbers. I just read a story in National Geographic that polar bears are losing a lot of weight because the ice is melting and they can't get the gray seals that they eat, so all of that is changing. All brown bears share a large dish. They have a hump on their back, the grizzlies. They can roll over with one arm a 300-pound boulder. So, I mean, they're very, very strong. That's a muscle mass on them. The black bears do not have them. Although my niece is an elementary school teacher in Pawnee, Oklahoma, and they're the black bears, and they have a beautiful, you know, statue of a black bear with a big old hump on it. You know, I told her that was wrong, but, you know, they've had it there forever anyway. So the 2 species of brown bears in North America are the grizzly and the Kodiak bear. Anybody ever been to Kodiak Island? Anyway, it's a scary place because they have about over 3,000 Kodiak bears, and they're pretty large and very aggressive. But there's only 1 attack on humans a year there. That's because there's not a lot of humans that go there. So anyway, grizzlies are responsible for almost all bear attacks in North America, 46 attacks and 6 deaths per year. 3 of the world's 8 bear species live in North America, so the polar bear, the grizzly bear, and the black bear. Black bears are only, as I said, found in North America. They range from Canada into northern Mexico. All their numbers there are harder to count. They don't really keep track. Their population is estimated at about 800,000, so pretty good. They're 150 to 600 pounds, usually not typically over 600 pounds. We have had some black bears over 500 pounds in Connecticut. Most of those are bears that eat what we call anthropogenic food, birdseed, unsecured garbage. Our bigger bears are eating food that humans are putting out, so that's not a good thing. They can be 5 to 6 feet tall standing up. There's about 55,000 grizzly bears in North America. 30,000 of those are in Alaska. So anybody seen grizzly bears out west and in the national parks? They're quite a sight to see, aren't they? We crowd them way too much now out there, but so they can be 500 to 900 pounds, so pretty large, 7 to 10 feet tall standing up, so pretty formidable. The Kodiak bears are 600 to 1,400 pounds, and they can stand to 8 feet tall, so really big animals. Polar bears are the most aggressive of the lot. There's 26,000 to 30,000 right now, and their numbers are decreasing in the world. They are 900 to 1,500 pounds, so really big. They have really long legs. They can be, but they're a little shorter, 8 to 8.5 feet. So despite their enormous size, they're great swimmers, obviously, because gray seal is their favorite thing to eat. But they get to seals generally and then get on an ice cap and eat it, but now there's less of that landmass for them. So they can keep a 6-mile-an-hour pace for over an hour. Michael Phelps, stand aside, he was only 4.7 miles per hour at his fastest. So imagine something that large being able to go that quick. So this isn't to size, the scale, but it shows you the difference. Black bears have a pointy nose, and you can see the long legs on the polar bear, which does help it navigate snow as well. So those are pretty good. Probably good we don't have them here because we're not managing our behavior with black bears, so we certainly don't want grizzlies or any of these others here. So just a quick look, the grizzly is much, much larger than the black bear, much more threatening. Excuse me a second. People always say don't get between a sow and her cubs. That's true of grizzly bears, black bears. The first thing they teach those cubs when they come out of their dens is to climb a tree at the first instance of danger, the first thought of danger. So that's what they'll do. So you're hiking along and the sow's over here, the cubs are on the ground over there. She'll do a little hiss and a huff, and those cubs will skitter up that tree or as fast as they can. Just to give you an illustration, one of my bear biologist friends went out in a blizzard one weekend to find this one sow, because in late January and February, they try to find the yearling dens of the collared sows to see how many survive. But no, they use telemetry to find them, and no one can find it. So she said, I think I know where she is. She's out on a big rock outcropping, and about 12 feet down, there's a little opening in the rock, and she thinks the sow's there. So she ties a rope to her phone, turns the video on, and drops it down. But she didn't have to look because something hit it. So then she figured they were there, and she said, now I got to take another picture. So she took a picture, and then she said, I got to make some noise to see if the yearlings will run. So she made noise, and the 3 yearlings ran out of the den, away from the protection of their mother, and skittered right up a tree. So it's totally ingrained in them to do that. Whereas grizzlies, they're going to chase you down, if they're young or anywhere nearby. So be glad. We also don't have the short-faced bear, Arctodus simi, pretty big bear, and compared to a person 5 feet 10 inches tall. When standing, it could be 11 and a half feet, and it could run up to 50 miles an hour. So we're happy we don't have that one now. So these are the range of the different bears. The darker brown is where the black and grizzly bears cross over. You can see just a little patch of it down. And everybody's like, oh, I saw a grizzly bear. I'm like, no, there's none east of the Mississippi, and they just barely, hardly are even in Colorado. They're pretty much in the Yellowstone areas, and where you see there, the darker gray is the black bear. The next color tan is the grizzly bear, and the other tan is where the grizzly and polar bears cross over. So you can see their range now. This is kind of not accurate because black bears now are moving from Missouri into parts of Arkansas. Well, it does have Arkansas and also into southeast Oklahoma, and now they've seen them in western Texas. So they are moving. There is a special subspecies of black bear in Louisiana called the Louisiana bear. So anyway, a bear is a mythical creature. It's much maligned, a certain dangerous predator, bloodthirsty, often lying in wait. I love, this is not a flame. It's actually a dead pine bough, but it suited my purpose, as you can see. It looks like flame. So, or a big, cuddly, often lazy creature who laughs, sings, and plays with us. How many of you had a teddy bear when you were young? Now, be honest, guys. Most people did, but I had a stuffed camel. Don't ask me why. I grew up on a ranch. I think I got it at the State Fair of Texas, but I don't really remember for sure. So bears always have been, throughout history, very important in different cultures. But we had to name one, so here's how it happened. So as we all know, Teddy Roosevelt was a conservationist and a hunter and a president, and he loved to hunt, and he had a particularly bad year in 1902 in Washington. So he called his friend who was the governor of Mississippi, Mississippi, said, can I come there and go bear hunting? Oh, sure, come on. So they go there, they're out all day, they hardly even saw a squirrel. So he said, well, this is just my luck, I'm going to go back to Washington. So the governor said, no, wait, I'll guarantee you get a bear. So he got a couple of guides, and some hunting dogs, and they chased like this 20-year-old male bear, And the dogs bit it in the flanks, and then they tied it to a tree. So then they called Teddy in and said, "Teddy, take your shot." He's like, "I'm not going to shoot a bear tied to a tree." So then Clifford Berryman was a very famous political cartoonist at the turn of the century for the Washington Post. He heard the story, so he depicted the bear as a cub. So thereafter, any cartoon that he had with Teddy Roosevelt in it, he'd have a tiny cub. So, and it wasn't lost on these toy store. The Mitchums owned the most famous toy store in the whole New York area at the time in Brooklyn, and they had all kinds of toys. But he saw the cartoon, and he said to your wife, "Can you make a felt bear and stuff it?" So she made it. They put it in the window, and by lunchtime, there were 100 people wanted the bear. So they decided they'd call it Teddy's Bear, but they said, "We can't unless we ask the president." So he said, "Okay, as long as you make one for each of my grandchildren." So this is the original that's in the Smithsonian now. So if you're ever on Jeopardy, you might know that answer to that question. So again, throughout history, bears have been known for power, strength, majesty, healing powers, because they can stand, and they can actually walk pretty far. They don't choose to, but they can on their hind legs. There was a famous bear in New Jersey that was so injured on its front part of its body, it walked around for like a year or more before it got hit by a car. But they were very revered by Native Americans, and part of that probably because they could stand up. So if a Native American wanted to hunt a bear, they had to ask permission. And if they got permission, they would kill the bear. They would use some of the innards for medicine purposes, the furs for ceremonial dances and warmth. And when they were done, they felt so much about the bears, they put them on a pyre and burned them like they would of a great warrior. So again, very important. They even have constellations named after them, Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. When I teach constellations to kids, they go, "Those don't look like bears." And then I tell them the myth about it, and then they kind of say, "Okay, we're there." We have two flags, a lot of clothing people. Abercrombie & Fitch has used the California Republic flag, and then Missouri adopted bears in 1913 on their flag. If you've ever been to Berlin, anybody been there? They had seen bears, statues and stuff there. Apparently it's quite prevalent there. I saw the butt of a Eurasian bear when I was hiking in Slovenia, so I was happy just to see the butt, But anyway, so when the colonists came here, we had a healthy population of black bears and most of the fur animals that we have now. But the colonists feared anything they felt could hurt them or their domestic livestock, so they just started shooting everything. By 1800, they had what we call extirpated all the native mountain lions and wolves from Connecticut. Extirpated is a biologist's fancy word for no longer exists here, but exists somewhere else. By 1825, all the black bears were gone. At the same time, they started cutting forests down because they used wood for their houses. They also sent a lot of white pines over to Europe. In fact, King George would have people come and mark certain trees in New England as his own, and they'd use them for masts for ships and for building furniture. So the beaver trapping and the wood industry pretty much helped finance the New England colonies. But by 1850, we were 25% forested. When the colonists first came here, we were over 90%. So, and that affected the wildlife, the habitat, and everything. A lot of the farmers at the time then decided to go into industry because a lot of agriculture had moved out west and it wasn't profitable here anymore. So all of our farms that were laying fallows started growing again, getting trees and getting better habitat again. Connecticut has held at about 60% forested for quite a long time, but now we're dipping below that with all the development. So that will affect things a little bit. So I love Henry David Thoreau. So when he first went to Walden Pond as a youngster, it was a wild place, and he remembered that. So he decided when he wanted to spend a year in the woods, he said, Walden Pond's the best place. When he got there, a lot of trees were cut down. It wasn't the same. So he said, I cannot but feel as if I lived in a tamed and, as it were, emasculated country. Is it not a maimed and imperfect nature that I am conversant with? Thank God they cannot cut down the clouds. So that's a great quote. So anyway, today bears have returned. I need to change that number because it's just under 60, but it is lowering. But woods are the best habitat for bears and a lot of other animals that we have. It gives them healthy environment, lots of things to eat, lots of nuts. So now our beech trees have a disease, so we're going to start losing beech nuts, which are kind of the second nut they favor. But still, there's plenty of stuff to eat there. So there's the forest. We talked about that. You can see almost between 95 and 100% in 1650, and then the big dip in the 1850s. So interesting, in Connecticut, forest land ownership, 70% is privately owned. So that presents a challenge. And if you have a significant amount of land with trees, our foresters now are providing a free service. They'll come out and help advise you how best to manage your land with your trees. And it's really a great thing to take advantage of. So you see very little federal land in Connecticut, and state and local. A lot of the state and local would also, the reservoirs would be included in private. So anyway, black bears have returned to healthy. The numbers hanging around 1,200. Everybody says to me, well, I'm seeing a lot of sows with 3 cubs. How can it stay 12,000? Well, if we're getting 80 bears a year hit by cars, and we don't even know how many cubs, a lot of them probably get hit and the mother drags them into the woods. So, there's a little off balance there. Still, our biggest population is in northwestern Connecticut. They have started moving south. I hope they don't go down to the Gold Coast. They have been seen in Greenwich, but not in large numbers. So they haven't gone into eastern Connecticut as easily yet, even though there's great habitat for them. And they can swim really well, so it's not the Connecticut River. I like to say if they get over to Bradley Airport, they see some of those really big birds and they decide to turn around. But basically, a lot of the bears that are going to eastern Connecticut are the young dispersing males. So the moms kick their young out around 18 months old, their second summer, and she allows her female offspring to stay with her, but the young males have to go find their own. And it's kind of like, oh, no, there's a bear, but there's a boar there. There's a boar there. So they keep going until they can finally find a space where they're not going to be beat up and picked on. So we do have some breeding sows now across the river. And breeding populations is how you measure whether you have any kind of animal species, because that's what makes it continue. So this is on my road. It's kind of a woods road. And we have, I'm not sure of the number now, we lost 4 of our collared sows who'd been studied since like 2006 by a variety of means, some not so good. But we do study sows through collars. They have GPS units. The old ones had this big old bell, and they had to change it every year and get the GPS data off of it. The new ones, this is not a new one, but they're kind of this size now. And they can track the GPS data now by their computers and see where the bears are. But the really valuable thing is after a whole year, they can look at the dots and see what the territory and what the range are of the bears. And the range usually varies by available food. So this is a yearling on the left and a female on the right. And a lot of the bears in our area have, cream-colored patches on their chest. So not all, but a lot of them do. So in 2024, you can see the sightings. We do ask if you see any bear I got the new numbers here, to report it to DEEP. And it's a big, long URL, but if you just Google DEEP bear sightings, it'll take you to this interactive map. You put your town in and what species you're interested in. They also like you to report any bobcat or moose sightings, and separately fisher sightings, because we're doing a fisher study. We are losing population of fisher. We think it's because people are using rodenticide to kill mice. A lot of birds of prey now are dying from mouse poison. It's really rampant, and we're now getting furred animals that are dying of rodenticide poisoning. So please use snap traps or I have a heart trap. It's about this big. I've caught 6 mice at one time, and then I go let them go at that nasty neighbor's house. No, you just take them about 3 miles away and put them near a stump or some kind of good habitat. Something probably will eat them, circle of life, but that poison is really, really bad, and it is affecting a lot of wildlife populations now. So bears have been spotted in every town in Connecticut in recent years, so even those eastern, and they may just be travelers at the time. In 2023, they were in 165 of 169 towns. So in 2024, they were in 159 of 169 towns. Notably, sighting of sows with cubs are indicators about how that population is going to grow. So as I said, there are a few breeding sows over across the Connecticut River now, so that population will grow. So over the past 3 years, they've been reported in 117 of our towns. So this is what the wildlife sighting viewer looks like. And as of today, this afternoon, there were 6,568 sightings statewide. You can see the Farmington Valley and Barkhamsted and those areas are in the red. You guys have had 141 sightings so far reported. Middlebury 35, Newtown 35, Bridgewater 11, Woodbury 104, Roxbury 12, and Oxford 42. Now these are not hard data, meaning like I'm sitting here counting every one of you and I know exactly that there's this many people in here. This is data that the biologists use that helps them see the movement of the bears, you know, where they're going, how they're moving, how their territories are. So it's very important data, but it's not actual numbers. So like Simsbury now has the most strict feeding ordinance in the country, in the state, and I think the state probably, you know, they're moving towards making that, a statute. But before that, Simsbury had a lot of bear troubles because, say, in a neighborhood with 40 houses, and more than half of those houses had birdseed out, and the bears from April 1st until December 1st do not need your help, nor do birds, nor do anything. If you put birdseed out, you're going to attract raccoons who are rabies vectors. You're going to attract a lot of rodents. You know, it's not a good thing, and it's mostly self-serving because we want to see birds. My yard has, the guy before me, when I moved there in 2005, was like a master gardener. So and every year I put 2 or 3 more bushes, native plants. Some mornings I'll have over 35 species of birds with no human-provided food. So we're lucky in Connecticut that we have these kinds of environments. Right now they're eating a lot of berries. I have a mulberry tree, an old one in my yard, and they just love it. So please don't put out that food, even hummingbird nectar. Hummingbirds love to get nectar out of flowers, too. So anyway, this is what you'll see. Over in the left where you see that hourglass is a drop-down menu, and you can put whether it's bear, bobcat, whatever species you want to see. So it is valuable data for the biologists. It doesn't mean they're going to come running out and take your bear away. It's just important data. So there you are. So these graphs are a little old, but 2020, look how many bear sightings we had, 11,092. Guess why? We're all sitting at our kitchen table looking out the window. Oh, there's a bobcat in my yard. I didn't know we had bobcat here, and the bears. So we're paying attention and we're seeing things. Well, hopefully that engendered in you a love to look and see these animals as well, because we are very lucky. I gave a talk in West Hartford last year right before Christmas, and the projector wasn't working, so I was just kind of talking back and forth. There were 40 people there, and I said, how many of you are happy we have a healthy wildlife population in Connecticut? Guess how many raised their hands? 2 out of 40. It ruined my whole Christmas. I give over 100 talks a year for DEEP on various species, but still, that was just eye-opening to me. And if you read a lot of social media, like I said, if a coyote crosses the back of somebody's yard but is doing nothing, just crossing, people freak out, and there's really no reason to. So that was a sad thing. But then at the end of the talk, this woman who had recently moved there, I won't say from where, she said to me, can you tell me who to call at Deep to remove all the wildlife from my yard? So, I mean, I know you know this attitude, and so we can coexist with all these animals. We just have to do better behavior. We don't have a bear problem in Connecticut. We have a human problem in Connecticut, basically. Sorry about that. But anyway, I have these handouts. So that's the really long URL, but like I said, just Google CT Deep Wildlife Sighting. And if you have other situations, you know, and you can't get a hold of your dear ACO here, then you can call Deep's conservation dispatch number and, you know, tell them your issue and they will direct you. You also can email the biologists. They get hundreds and hundreds of emails a day, especially during black bear season, but they read them all. So, and they will get back to you if they feel that it's, not that it wouldn't be credible. I mean, you know, if a bunny chased you when you're out, you know, watering your flowers, you know, they might not think that's a credible reason to call you back, but, you know, there might be other reasons. So they're very good at that. So, again, this is the viewer. So sows with offspring, so you can see the light color, so 1 to 10. So they have moved over into eastern Connecticut, but mostly still in that whole northwest quadrant up there. And you can see the growth here. Reports of sows with offspring are the dark red, so it is climbing, and they are healthy, but you know they do get hit by cars. And our average number of cubs that a sow has is 2.5. Go figure, but you know biologists don't round it off. I mean, so, but we do have you know a fair number with 3 or 4. So here you can see the average. Black bears have a very good first-year survival rate. 82% is a huge survival rate for any animal in the wild. I mean, that's pretty incredible. So after that, though, once the yearlings are kicked out, they get hit by cars, they get desperate, you know, they get into houses, and if they enter a house, they'll be put down. It's a policy, because if they enter a house, they've learned that that's where there's food, and they're going to go in again. And oftentimes the mothers who go, they teach the young how to how to eat the bird seed. The young learn that, how to raid the garbage. They learn that, just like your kids learn from you. And then you're setting up a habituated bear. Yep. Yeah, some kind of a regulation that will prevent feeding birds between the 1st of April and early December. They first started the Bear Smart program many years ago out west, where you had grizzlies and black bears. So they disallowed any kind of what we call anthropogenic human-provided food during those months, and they have bear-proof garbage cans, which work. You can buy those, and even if your garbage company doesn't have the mechanism to pick them up, if you don't have a garage to keep your garbage in, you can have those, and then, you know, on garbage day, just unlock them. But my friend had one, and a bear took it a mile into the woods, didn't get in it. So those are really good. Are you in like a community that has a board or whatever they call it? So I know, but I'll tell you, there's a community just on the Winstead-Torrington border called Lake Ridge. It was kind of a second home community for a lot of New Yorkers, but now a lot of year-round residents. They are the most progressive place I've ever seen. They have bear-proof dumpsters. They don't allow people to have birdseed out between set times, and they're very strict about it. So if you know anybody on, what do you call those boards at a community, like, there's a name for it. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so, you know, if you know any of those, talk to them and tell them to talk to Lake Ridge, because they really are a model community for that kind of community. No, I know, but here's something you can tell them. So imagine if your neighbor is feeding bears and regularly get, bears in the yard, not just a sow with cubs, but a couple of, bears wander through, and you have your grandkids next door and you're feeding them a peanut butter sandwich for lunch. Bears smell 200 times what we smell and 8 times what a bloodhound smells. So that bear is going to smell that peanut butter and decides it wants to go over there and have a little nosh, right? Well, that's the inherent danger. You're setting up, these habituated bears, not the people that feed the peanut butter, but the people that have the seed out. So it's really, there is a rule now that DEEP has, that if somebody has bird seed out and it attracts bears, then they can be reported. And you can report anonymously because it does set up a really bad situation. Habituated bears can be, I hate to say it, but sort of bad bears, because with bears, it's like in Oliver, the song Food, Glorious Food. With animals, it's all about food. So food and then taking care of their offspring, then habitat. So, we have to clean up our garbage. We have to clean up our habits. We need to burn off your grill after you barbecue. I mean, it takes a little work, but if you value nature and animals, we need to have those behaviors, yeah. Yeah, I mean, they have a whole Bear Smart area online where you can read all this stuff. And you're right, I'm preaching to the choir with most of you are probably animal lovers and environmental lovers, but you want to know how to handle any situation with a bear. And black bears typically are more shy, but once they become food habituated, their brain is just thinking about that food. It's like a one-track mind. They know where this food is, so they'll go around to those same places. Mm-hmm.
When they talk about the restrictions that say that community has in place or that the state is considering, does that also include not just bird feeders, but people that throw peanuts out onto their
Yeah, I mean, you really shouldn't. No, you shouldn't throw anything out. And a lot of our food is not really good for animals, like people who throw out corn and stuff for deer. Their stomachs can't process that, and they can die, from it. So, it's really, really not a good thing. So, but it's hard to get everybody to buy into it, until it's like I thought, this is maybe a bad analogy, but I thought when Sandy Hook happened that it might change things a little bit, but it didn't. But if things happen in your yard and your dog inadvertently gets clawed by a bear because you have it off leash and there's a mother and her cubs been out there, if that dog goes running up to a bear, they're going to swat it. They're not trying to kill it, but their claws are this long. So they're not trying to kill your animal, but they're trying to keep it away, like we swat a mosquito. So it really is on us a lot, to try to behave and to maybe shame people, And when reporting happens like this law now, it's not a law, it's a regulation. If somebody's attracting bears because they have birdseed out, you can anonymously report them and you will not be revealed. And then they'll get a visit from either ACO or from DEEP, and they'll tell you, look, you're attracting bears, so you need to bring your bird feeders in. And if they don't, and it still happens, they'll get an escalating fine. So at least we have that right now. Mm-hmm. Right, yeah, you can call animal control or that number I have a handout for at DEEP, and they will, and it's important. I mean, you hate to be like a tattletale, right? But we're at a point with our black bears where we really have to be mindful of what is creating them into the cocaine bear. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, they're got a bag of cocaine that fell out of a plane and they ate it. It's just that they're eating what we're giving them. So not a good thing. So, all right, so you can see sow reports. And this is a new map. I don't quite get it, but somebody said, I want to see the roads on there. Well, this is one territory of one bear that you get on a GPS unit, but I told him, I don't think this shows well on a slide. You need to do a better job. So anyway, so conflicts and home entries, you can see how they've grown. They have grown sort of with the population. And you can see in 2024. Now a conflict could be just that they knocked somebody's bird feeder down and they got ticked off about it. So it's not necessarily a big deal, but to that person, it's a big deal. So they're not all things like the bear tore your door down or anything, but so the home entries are an issue. So you can see the black bear conflicts have grown, and again, they're pretty much still up in the Farmington Valley. There's incidences of bear entering or breaking into homes occurred in 15 different municipalities last year, so it is growing. If a bear enters your living space, not your porch, not your garage, but your actual living space, the policy is it will be put down. The biologists hate that, but they have to have that in place because, as I said, that bear's going to go again to another place. Again, as you can see, 2020, there were a lot of conflicts. So 2015 to 2024, it's just been steadily growing. For some reason in 2023 it dipped down. That was a drought year. We're not sure why. It's hard to figure out why. This was the pie-eating bear in my town. That's steps to go to a door and to a kitchen, and this woman had baked a pie. And then she decided to go to the store, and there's no store near where I live, so she drove off, left her window up, with the screen, and this bear, which happened to be a yearling, smelled the pie and went through the window and ate the pie, ate the peelings in the sink, and the little dog was yapping at it, so the neighbors got the photos. The bear cared nothing about the dog, left it alone, then came out the window. So if you bake something really palatable, close your windows, because like I said, if you feed your dog on your deck and that dish is totally empty, a bear can smell that from over a mile away, and to them it's food. So you need to take all that stuff in. You need to keep your garage doors down if you have any kind of food in there. We just have to do better habits. A lot of people kind of get a kick out of this, but I'm showing it because it shows the inherent habituation and danger of a black bear who smells food. And sliders are the worst things. If you leave your sliders unlocked, those bears are just going to open them and come right in, and that's happened at this house. This is in Barkhamsted. This woman had a restaurant, and she had just made fresh lasagna. She brought it to her mother's house, put it in the freezer so it wasn't frozen. Well, there was a bear nearby who smelled it, and here's what happened. Now, the slider door was completely unlocked. It gets that bag of fresh lasagna. There's no people in the house, so. And they're very smart. I mean, this bear knew how to open the freezer and knew how to get out the window. And it is a little humorous, but it's not, because, these bears are learning these things, and then they're going to get in houses and. Well, they will put a bear down if they catch it. That was a tagged bear. I'm not sure, but if they catch it, it would be put down. So, again, I mean, it was put in the freezer, so you figure out. But if there's a bear around and you're walking with a bag of lasagna, they're going to smell it, So, anyway, it's best to keep if you're not home, it's best to keep your windows down. So, anyway, so here's the established range. This is interesting. I don't want to walk away from where did I put my glasses? Hold on. All right. Okay. All right, I'll have to read. So, as you can see, I'm going to have to go over there. In 2000, most of the bears were in that dark area. And then 2000, 2004, the next darker color. So as you get lighter colors, the green is 2020 to 2024, and The green is 2020 to 2024. So you can see in how their ranges are expanding. You can see they're right down here now. They're getting perilously close to I-95, which is not a good thing. But again, moving across the river has not been a lot yet. I don't know how I lost my glasses, but anyway, so. Not really? No. They usually, they're neck hangers. I'll find them, but anyway. So these are conflicts and home entries, as you can see. So we have other states. So Connecticut is the red, compared to blue, which is New York, green, which is New Jersey, orange is Maryland. I don't know why we have Maryland in there, but anyway, as you can see, even though there were fewer home entries in 2022 than 2023, our long-term trend is still cause for concern. So scaled for bear populations, our entries far exceed those of neighboring states, Massachusetts and New York. So Massachusetts has 4,500 bears, and New York, 7,000, although New York's a much bigger state. Relatively, they see less than one home entry per 100 bears, where in the last 6 years, we have 3.1 home entries per 100 bears per year. So it's a huge problem. The biggest problem is that they are habituated to food, garbage and food. So that's causing the difference. So those little sailing ships are, those are home entries. So again, here, reported home entries per 100 bears. We're the dark blue here, and you see. Now, New Jersey was kind of typical to us, and they implemented a lot of Bear Smart programs, and that has cut down. But as you can see, a lot of people say, hold on. A lot of people say, oh, you know, they're like doing bad things to us. But if you look at it, trash and bird feeders are over 60% of the problems caused by bears, or the bears are bear problems, like conflicts. Very little with agriculture. They do like to get in cornfields, so they will do that. They will raid your, you know, they'll go to apple orchards and stuff like that. You see beehives, very small. I do have some diagrams about using electric fencing. You know, we had 1,000 acres or more where I grew up, and we had hot wire around the whole part. So people here have a lot smaller area, and to get electric fencing is not that expensive. You can even get solar. So if you have beehives or you have any kind of animals you want to protect, you really need to have hot wire around it. So, but anyways, so, but to me, that's really, you know, shocking to see that most of the problems are caused because we have unsecured trash and we have bird feeders out. Mm-hmm. Right?
It's got, you know, zucchini and cukes and pumpkin. And we've had a bear this week that 20 feet from that went up the hill, the same place. Didn't touch it.
You know, we have a community garden in Barkhamsted with boxes, right? And no animals go in there. I don't even know why. We didn't put any coyote urine there. You know, we didn't have any guy go around and pee or anything. I don't know why, you know, sorry about that, but that does work, by the way, if you want to keep some animals out of your flower bed. But sometimes they just, you know, they're probably getting enough berries and all kinds of they're omnivores, so more than 85% of their food is like plants, nuts, berries. A very small percentage is meat or dead stuff. So they're probably just getting enough food. Also, right now, it's really hot. So a lot of those bears are going to go sit in mud piles or get in somebody's swimming pool maybe, or, you know, get in a stream. A lot of them go to reservoirs because they're really hot. You know, you see they got a lot of fur. So I don't know. They just seem to not raid the garden a lot. So. Yeah. Yeah, they probably like a pumpkin latte too, but I mean, they do like pumpkins. I'm not sure why, but it's, who knows? I mean, we're not exactly in the mind of the bear, so we just surmise things. So again, you can see here's states and their conflicts. So average vehicle kills, This is a little dated, but like, you know, we've been up to 60 or more. You can see Maine has 38,000 black bear. They also have about the same amount of moose, so I always tell people, don't waste your time. If you want to see a moose, go to Maine, especially near Baxter Park. New Hampshire, 5,800, Vermont, 5,100. So they all have a lot more than we do, but they're not as cut up by roads and buildings as we are, and that's the inherent problem. You know, we've got a lot of buildings and a lot of population. Our population, I think, grew by 100,000 or something since COVID. So, you know, just imagine that presents even challenges for all kinds of animals. So there's about 12 towns now that have some kind of feeding ordinance, and pretty much it says you can't feed from late March till early December. The bears aren't going in as early now because we have, you know, because things are warmer. Now, this comes from a report called The State of the Bears. About 3 or 4 years ago, Deep started putting together, it's really like it would in the old days be a glossy magazine, but now it's online, so you can Google Deep State of the Bears, and it'll give you all these statistics from last year. It's very well done and very interesting, so I encourage you to look at it. So there are about 10 or 11 towns now with feeding ordinances, and they've gotten more strict each town. So, and usually it's an escalating fine, you know, but it does depend on people reporting the bears. So, you know, the wildlife biologists, they're really busy. Like, people don't give them, you know, enough credit, but they give a lot of advice in the summer. You can't even imagine how many phone calls they have to talk on and emails. They will set a trap, a bear can, after there's damage, say it's crop damage or your beehive. Not necessarily gonna put that bear down. As I said, if it's an unprotected beehive or whatever they did, they will tranquilize it, measure everything on it, weigh it, take DNA, put what we call a pit tag, which is like a microchip in it if it doesn't have one, and then they'll wait and let it wake up, and then they'll haze it. So they'll make a lot of loud noise. Like I used to say, if you put me in a padded room and played Ravi Shankar, I'd probably go crazy. But, you know, they might, you know, make a lot of noise. And if that doesn't work, they might shoot the bear in the rear with a paintball gun. It doesn't hurt them. They've got very, very thick rear ends. My preferred method, and I've only had to use it twice, is a high-powered slingshot with acorns. I don't want to put ball bearings in the yard, right? So shoot them in the butt with an acorn, and they can either eat it or run. So it does work very well. So anyway, the best way, we've talked about this, be bear aware, manage your food and garbage. Try not to put your garbage out until morning of pickup. I know if you work early, that's hard to do. Doesn't ensure that a raccoon or a bear is not going to raid your can, but they, you know, you have less chance they will. I mean, even in my town, people put their garbage out on Saturday night for Monday pickup. You know, you want to go and just put a sticky note, you know, on their garbage or something. So, you know, also remove all traces of any food. Please, if you know there's bears or wild animals around, keep your dog leashed. I say when you go out in the yard, my favorite bear deterrent is what I call the bear scare can. It's a metal coffee can with coins. You can use rocks, but coins work better. It'll scare any wild animal. It might even scare your neighbor, but it really works. And some people use air horns, but air horns sound a lot like car horns. So, you know, bears will just kind of like, huh? You know, just kind of look at you. Now, if you're out hiking, you know, I recommend you could take a small air horn, because a bear out more in the wild is going to be shocked by it more than a bear in your yard where there's food. People ask me, should I carry bear spray if I hike? Now, the biologists do carry bear spray. If it makes you feel more comfortable, you can carry it, but be careful. It shoots from here to that wall, and it's pretty lethal. It'll stop a grizzly for 30 minutes. So I found one in a park, Sunnybrook Park in Torrington, hanging on a tree. Now, if a kid got that bear spray and just for the jollies sprayed it at a person, it wouldn't be a good thing. So I just say, I mean, when I drove across home to Texas, I carried bear spray, not for animals, so just to let you know. But you can take, just carry pepper spray. And, you know, I think you should carry pepper spray anyway if you're by yourself at night. I mean, it will give people, you know, issues with their eyes and stuff. But again, so if you're going out with your dog at night, I recommend a bear bell. And I used to laugh when I was young and went out west and they were selling tourists these little bells to scare grizzlies, right? Well, the thing it does, it's not a natural sound. So if you put it on your backpack or put it on your dog's collar when you let them out at night, it's not a natural sound. So a lot of wild animals are going to steer clear of that, even though it's not loud. So I would recommend get a bear scare can, shake it before you go outside, even in the daytime, you know, and then probably, you know, the bobcats, the coyotes, all those things are going to run away. And unless you have a habituated bear, you know, they're going to go on their merry way. Now, I'm not saying every single bear that's not habituated is not going to hang around. You know, they might. But if you practice bear smart practices then and try to get other people to do that as well, then things are going to get a little better overall. So, and it's common sense, really. So, hunting and feeding laws. So, you can see feeding bears is legal. Now, a lot of that is it's legal to feed bears to hunt them, not feed bears in your yard. Maine does allow people to put out donuts and stuff to shoot bears. But most states you can see it's unlawful. So again, all this is online in that State of the Bears. So carrying capacity is the amount of a certain species that a region can tolerate. The culture carrying capacity lowers that number somewhat. It's like what society will tolerate. So, you know, we're going to be somewhere in the middle when hunting comes up. Our biologists have recommended hunting for Northwest Connecticut, but it hasn't been passed. There will be some point where, you know, we will. Like in Maine, I know that some of the bears do learn. If a bear gets shot, you know, they do get a memory of it. So it does help to some degree. But in a state, you know, that's really populated, like I said, the biologists have recommended it in Northwest Connecticut. So someday it will probably come. But again, the carrying capacity would be the number that the biologists think is the high point of too many bears. And cultural would drop that down a little. So I don't know those numbers. So anyway, they exist. So we do like you to report vehicle-killed bears, bobcats, or fisher. And again, that's that number, which I have a handout to the Incon dispatch. They do take the roadkill animals and they necropsy their stomach and they learn a lot, you know, whether they have a disease or whether they had any food. There was one young bobcat that was hit, it had nothing in its belly. So that bobcat probably wasn't going to survive, you know. So they get a lot of data from the road-killed animals. So this is habitat in Connecticut. So the green is, the very dark green is the best habitat. And the next green is, so you can see northwest corner, but eastern Connecticut, they have a lot of woods and great habitat, a lot of marshes, a lot of water. You can see going down the Connecticut River Valley, the red is the worst habitat, and I-95, you know, that's pretty bad habitat for things. So you guys are you in the second green with a little bad habitat, right? Is that you with the little square in the middle? Yeah, or the rectangle. So anyway, Connecticut really has great habitat for all furry animals. This is our typical profile of a black bear. Bears, they do swim. They swim very well. I had this cooler in my backyard that I was going to take to the dump, and we had a big rain, and then this little cub got in it, and I'm like, how am I going to get it out? What if it gets its butt stuck? And then it got out, and its other siblings got in. So this time of year, don't be surprised if you have a pool or, you know, a kiddie pool or something. They're really hot right now, like we are, and they might be just dipping in, but they do swim really well. This was on the Farmington River. This sow was trying to get her yearling to figure out how to swim. It didn't want to swim, But it finally did, and the whole time it was biting the fur of its mother as it went across. So they can swim up to 6 miles per hour as well, but not as far as a polar bear. They have really large webbed paws that help them, paddle, and thick fur to keep them warm in cold climates. They also have long necks that allow them to take deep breaths without swallowing water. I'm always amazed how every animal from the possum to, bears are equipped really spectacularly for whatever their lifestyle is. So possum has the most teeth of any animal in North America. Anybody want to guess how many? 50. So when they're really afraid, the first thing they do is show all those teeth. So how many teeth do we have? Yes, very good. A black bear has 42. So anyway, what do black bears eat? Almost everything. They're kind of like goats. If they get into garbage, they're going to eat a lot of stuff. A neighbor who works on cars, he's had 3 buckets of oil that bears have eaten. So I don't know what the attractant is in oil, but they're like goats. They eat everything. They will eat dead stuff, particularly in the spring. If there's some carcasses, they will eat that. They will, if they're walking along and there's an animal there, they might eat it. So they're not eating up all our fawns like some people like to say. It's probably a more rare occurrence, but it does happen. If they get into your hen pen, and because they smell that scratch and there's none of it there, and then they look down, oh, that looks good, and there's a chicken. They're not going in there like a weasel necessarily to eat that chicken, but if it's there, they're going to eat it. So again, electric fencing really helps, putting your chickens up at night. Remember, birds of prey can get your free-range chickens, and weasels can get into a hole this big, and sometimes they just kill all your chickens and don't even eat them. So, it's really incumbent on us, whether we have domestic pets like cats and dogs, and really you should keep your cats inside. They kill millions and millions of birds a year, and birds are dying enough. But if you have animals, you need to supervise them and take care of them, or don't have them. So you can see if you're hiking along, you'll see a lot of clawed logs. They eat a lot of ants and insects. They get a lot of protein, but they have to eat a lot of it, but they do. This is interesting. I was able to go out with some biologists one day, and they were working on one bear because they were trying to, tag a couple of bears. Now, there is a myth about bear tags. Some people think one tag means they were in trouble once, 2, twice, 3, you're out, like the California rule. That's not true. They put 2 tags on a bear because unlike a cow, which they put 2 tags on anyway, bears have hands. They have paws that they can use like hands, so they can actually tear those out. A cow had a big trouble with a hoof, so they do put 2 in, hoping that they both will stay. So it doesn't mean that it was a problem bear. Anyway, so the biologists were processing this one bear, and this one, they were 2 males that were hanging around together in the autumn, and this one could smell the donuts that were used in the bear can to catch the other one. And he's very frustrated because, number one, his buddy's over there with something, humans. I don't know if they know we're human, and he can't get to it or the food, so. And there were no insects in this tree. This bear was just clawing it and doing all kinds of stuff and looking over like, hey, pretty frustrated, but they are also very playful bears. He tears that limb off, and then watch his face after he gets it broken. So anyway, that's just a little glimpse of bear behavior. I think that's kind of fun to see. So anyway, in the spring, when their favorite food appears, skunk cabbage, the bears are really going for it. They love it. That's what it looks like. So that's their number one thing to eat, aside from garbage and birdseed. This would be their first natural thing they will like to eat. That is a bear claw on the leaf of a skunk cabbage. This is the fruit that's in skunk cabbage. Now, you could, if you're on Survivor, which is fake anyway, Survivor, you could eat that, but it tastes terrible and gives us a bad stomach, but we could survive on it. But it does smell like skunk, so if you have a bear come by that's been in a lot of skunk cabbage, you can smell it. Blueberries they love. About this time of year up on Bear Mountain, there's acres and acres of blueberries. It's even in the Appalachian Trail Hiker's Guide that when you get to Bear Mountain, there's a lot of blueberries. But they don't say there's probably a lot of bears sitting in the blueberries eating them like this. So they love blueberries, raspberries, any kind of berries. This is my mulberry tree. This sow came in the yard and was eating the mulberries and showing the youngster, you can see there, how to eat the mulberries. And mulberries last almost a whole month, so. And they love dandelions. One day I was looking out in my backyard and it was covered with dandelions, and I saw a bear feeding a dandelion to her cub. And so I went to work, and when I came home, there were no dandelions in my backyard. So they do love dandelions, and they also have a sweet tooth, like someone else we know. So here's a guy's beehive. Does that look very protected? So this is state of the art. And my friend who has this didn't spend a lot of money. Once you get the poles and the solar and those little hives, I didn't know people actually went and bought bees and put them in. I thought they were natural. What do I know? But anyway, so, and then I have a handout that tells you how to space the wires, usually 8 inches apart, what the ampage is, and you can find more information on DEEP. Just Google DEEP bees. But here's what happened to that other guy's. So the bears, they eat the hives, they eat the combs, they eat the bees. They'll eat like a wasp nest and eat all the wasps. So, and so they did process the bear. They caught it in a bear can, they tranquilized it, and they measure, like I said, everything, the claws, the feet, the ears, the girth, the length of their nose. They'll scan them and see if they have a pit tag or microchip. Then they'll weigh them. So weighing, if it's a big bear, they put them on a tarp that's got little straps on it, and they use just a rod to lift them up. So if it's a 500-pound bear, you gotta hope you have the guys, the big strong guys there. But so then they would haze that bear. So I do have this handout. This is it works very well. And that little silver thing over there is aluminum foil with bacon in it. So and put a little grease on the wire, and when a bear gets that, you can see it does work. You don't have to take my word for it. So that one got zapped. Don't worry, when we had our electric fencing, my friends would come over and they'd say, "Is it on?" "No, it's not on," and they'd touch it and like. So you see they left, even the mom, so it is effective, does work. So anyway, once they've tasted human food, they won't forage, like I said, they're like ghosts, they eat everything. Please, if you have these, I never had kids, but I think pretzels or Cheetos are in these big old things. If you have any of those buckets like that, please cut them up, because anything from fawns to cubs, we've had 2 or 3 cubs in the last few years that had these on their head. They got separated from mom. It was a drought. They're running around. You're afraid they're going to drown. The biologists try to chase them down, mostly a lot through social media. Finally, this one was chased up a tree, and they were able to get it down. But anything that you think an animal might get caught in, always cut up those 6-pack plastic things. Don't leave any fishing wire out. All kinds of animals get in trouble. So bears do love natural berries, but they also will raid garbage cans and bird seed. this is really telling. This is bear scat or poop that's totally sunflower seed. You can't even see the gelatinous material that holds it together. And this is, to me, the epitome of what we are doing to our bears. And you can go around, people say, oh, well, they're not going to poop right next to where they feed them. Yes, they generally do. They leave the yard and they poop. Does a bear poop in the woods? Yeah, but they also poop pretty close to where they're getting that food. So acorns, when the autumn comes, bears have to eat 20 to 30,000 calories a day. Normally they eat about 5. That's equivalent to 35 Big Macs a day in calories. Now, sunflower seeds are very high in calories. They have to eat a lot more acorns, but you know, they will go out and hang out under oak trees and eat a lot of acorns and a lot of stuff. It's called, nuts are called hard mast. This is a bear on the left in August 2018. This is her in November. So that's how large she got by going in what we call hyperphagia and eating that 20 to 30,000 calories a day. If she didn't have tags on, you wouldn't even believe me that was the same bear, right? And here she is in another year. So the summer they get a little raggedy, but they really pack on the pounds and helps them through hibernation. So here's bear biology. Connecticut, on average, you know, our male bears are probably 300, 400 at the some 500, not really the norm. Adult females, we're getting a lot of females. We have one this year that was almost 300 pounds when they visited her den with new cubs. So generally they lose a lot of that, but because the bears are going in a lot later, you know, that fat's not going off as easily. So they breed late May to August, so if they have their second-year cubs that are 16, 18 months, they finally kick them out. And as I said, they tolerate the female in their territory, but not the males. And then they'll start hanging around with the males. And sorry, guys, it's on the sow's terms, so you'll have to follow her for weeks if she doesn't want to mate right then. And when they mate, then they go together. So they say bears are solitary, and yeah, the males generally are, except for when they're with their mother, when they're born, or yearlings, or when they're mating. But if you think about it, sows are, you know, they have their cubs. Generally, we say January 7th is when they usually have their cubs. They have what's called delayed implantation. So when they mate between May and August, the eggs are fertilized, but they're not implanted until November, when the body recognizes if they have enough food to support cubs. If they don't support cubs, the eggs are never implanted. And there are other animals that this is true of. So then the eggs are implanted in November, even though they've already been fertilized in the summer, and they have them in January. So it's a protection, you know, for the animals. So when the cubs are born, they're only 6 to 12 ounces. All wild animals, usually their eyes are closed. But the bear cubs have no fur on them right then. And the females can breed at 2.5 years, males usually older. So tall and strong. It's hard to tell the sex of a bear unless, you know, the males generally will be bigger, not always. Or if they're stretching like this, then you can tell. A lot of people, oh, he's scratching his back. Well, all animals mark territory. So when a bear is rubbing his back on this tree, he's probably getting some ticks off, but he's also leaving his scent. He probably is going to raise his head up and bite on that limb. Every telephone pole on my street has bear claw markings all over it. So there they are when they're young. I gave this to friends on Mother's Day one time because I think it really encapsulates the love of a mother for her young. So these are a couple of bears. These came out kind of early spring. That's probably a 500-pound bear over there. And again, bears do stand up just out of curiosity pretty much. Now, they might be standing up, and if you're starting to move closer, they'll start hissing at you. They have a false charge. It's called a bluster. So they'll get on all fours, slap their front feet, and then jump about a yard. But they always stop. But if you see like a 300-pound black animal coming at you like that, you're going to think, oh, it was coming after me. But stand your ground, just look at it. Don't ever run from a wild animal, because even though they're not carnivores, that sets up prey or play, you know, in their minds. So if you come outside or if you're gardening and then there's a bear there, all of a sudden just turn around, look at it, and start backing away. You can say, hey, bear, you know, and just, you know, go to your safest spot, whether it's in your car or up on your deck or away. If it's starting to come towards you, you want to make a lot of noise. Say you're out hiking, raise your hands, do jumping jacks, sing off key, you know, make a lot of noise. And if they keep coming, then you can throw things at them. And pretty much they're going to tire of it, you know, most of the time. Very rarely are they going to really attack you. So again, to hibernate or not to hibernate. So this bear, so after bears have eaten that much food, they get into like a sleepwalking state. So before they go into their den, they're just kind of like this, and sometimes they'll just sit down. This bear, it was snowing, and she just decided to hang out because they don't really feel the snow. She just sat there and got snowed on, and you know, she was fine. So anyway, not unnatural to see them at the late phase. Now, bears, that's a bear den right down there. Bears don't fully hibernate. They go into what we call a state of torpor. So their heart rate slows, their breathing slows, you know, all their systems slow down. But unlike truly hibernating animals, which are usually under 7 pounds, chipmunks, stuff like that, they can get up in a second and run if they have to. So they don't have to eat, they don't defecate or pee or anything, so they can stay for many months in there if they have to. So typically the sow with this year's cubs will go in her den first, and then the sows with yearlings, then the really fat bears because they just can't get around anymore, and then the other random bears like the yearlings and the other bears. Now some of our bears are really not hibernating much, and a lot of them are hibernating under decks because guess what? There's year-round birdseed in the yard, so they figure, oh, I'll go take a little winter's nap, and then I'll go out and have a nosh, you know, and then go back under. So we are having that happen a lot. So bears do live an average of 18 years in the wild. We had one up in Heartland who lived to be 30 or 31. She had stopped having cubs at about 27. She was shot in Massachusetts by a farmer. But anyway, so they can, you know, they are big animals. They don't have any natural predator in Connecticut besides humans, you know, just from bad habits and car strikes. So they can do pretty well. So this is just to show you how so every bear, so like if you watch Disney, I love Disney because it does engender a love of nature and animals in all of us, but it also skews the facts sometimes a little bit. So like it always says bears are in caves, or it always says it'll have an eagle flying over to the voice of a red-tailed hawk. So sometimes the facts aren't exactly right, but I still think, you know, they do a great service because, so anyway, this is a male bear, and even the males will bring in leaf litter and other things to make their den more comfortable. You can see it'll pull in those leaves. And so sometimes if you come along near where a sow's den is and you see a big area scraped, that's probably leading up to her den where she's gotten pine needles and leaves and stuff like that. So well, that's a friend of mine talking. So again, they can be, a lot of our bears are in slash piles where you have big down trees and they'll just get in the triangle of that. Sometimes they get totally snowed on. These are just some samples of different dens. This is dated, but it's still pretty true, although our rock dens have grown a little bit. And those are not typically caves. They're just, you know, a lot of our rock outcroppings have little openings in them. And raccoons, porcupines, bobcats love those areas too. These are samples of dens. One of the most unusual is this one's in People's State Forest, top right. That bear just denned on top of Phragmites in a marsh. Totally exposed. She's there with her cubs. They'll get down in a tree and the biologist might have to climb down for them. There's one, that's a slash pile, so there's a bear under that. Here's a rock outcropping, and if you look, you can see the biologist knows the bear's there with her cubs, and he's got what we call a jab stick, which has a a syringe on it, which is how they tranquilize the bear, and then they'll pull, once she's sedated, they'll pull her out on a tarp, and then they'll get the young cubs. Everybody said, wow, don't those cubs claw you? No, because they've been under a fur coat for a month and a half, and they just want to get into your vest or something. But a bobcat kitten, forget it. You know, they're a different story. But so again, there's that Phragmites one under decks. So the biologist, if there's a bear under the deck early in the hibernation time, they will talk to the homeowner. They'll tell them, put up the birdseed right now, but we need to haze this bear if it's a male. But if it's a female, it's going to have cubs. They're going to say, look, this female's going to have cubs. We probably need to leave it there. You know, are you going to be sunbathing on your deck or whatever? So anyway, so they get down in hollow trees. New Hampshire had a pretty good solution. They drilled a little hobbit door in the bottom of the tree, and then they went in and got the bears out, and then they just put the door back when they were done. So, but most biologists, they'll climb down in there. So there, even a big bear can get in these little areas. That's out west. So winter den studies, they do go to the yearling dens first, and then they will use telemetry to find these sows with this year's cubs. This was interesting. This was at Bristol Eastern High School, right by a parking lot. So some trees had fallen down, so they cut them up and just put them in a pile right there. So around about March, I think, you know, there's a lot of kids driving cars, and right next to it, and that was a bear den right there on the other side, right by a stream. So the biologist had to go and move the bear because her cubs, it had been enough time. And she made like a little nest, and there they are. They had to go down in there, get the bear, pull her up, and here were her cubs. So their feet are completely pink, you know, because they haven't walked on anything. Bears do shed their pads on their paws every year. So, and then this is how they weigh the cubs. They put them in this little bag, and sometimes the cubs don't want to go there, so they'll zip them in, only for about 3 seconds. But so anyway, this is so Peoples State Forest. We celebrated the 100th anniversary last fall. It was a great day, and we had a documentarian who's has a second home in town since before COVID, and she's internationally known, and she made this video. We got a grant. So this is visiting a bear den. It's in a rainy day. This bear's den was just at the bottom of a tree. There was no cover or anything, and this is my friend Melissa, who is like bear woman.
This bear was born in 2018. She is the offspring of one of our historic collared females in Peoples State Forest. We're going to get her GPS locations on her collar from a full year's worth of data. We'll look at her overall body condition, den type, and then we'll put her back with her cubs. Little female, male, and what were you? You were a male, right? Yeah, 2 boys and a girl. Okay. Females tend to overlap their ranges with related females, so she may grow up and stay here in Peoples or in the surrounding forests. These 2 males, when they're about 1.5 years old, they'll probably leave Peoples State Forest here in Connecticut. When people and wildlife come into conflict, whether it's issues with bears getting at trash or bird feeders, you know, who knows what's going to happen with these 3 bears. I mean, it's great that we have this type of habitat here, not only for bears, for a lot of different wildlife. 9.6. I mean, these cubs, pretty lucky that they're born into a more wild environment. Hopefully it'll stay as wild as they can.
So that was her just below the tree there. It wasn't really much of a den. So, but a lot of times in the winter, the biologists are trudging out in the snow. That's a bear cub. It's like a little cry. So there's a collared bear, and there's her 3 cubs. The male's in the middle there. So sometimes the cubs are kind of grizzled when they're born. Sometimes they're black, sometimes they're not, but they generally turn black. And their nails are pretty long. So there's just some pictures of them when they're young, different spots. That's a den, totally exposed, but on MDC and state property. So there she is. You can see the collar in the middle there. So there she'd been tranquilized, so they put her back, and one biologist will stay there until the mother is awake enough that, they know she can protect her cubs. There they are pulling the cubs out after they tranquilize. There's the jab stick, but as you see, this is on an incline, so there's the chance that the bear, when they tranquilize it, might stumble out, so they have a tranquilizer gun at the ready, and it's a little faster, so just in case. But they're very, very careful and take great care. So here they are. Now they're waiting. They have tranquilized the mother, and can you believe she gets in there? You can see her collar, and they're waiting to see, because they guess at what last year her weight might be, so they guess at what the right amount of tranquilizer is. That looks like it's a really big, but it's really just a syringe. And they always send Melissa in because she's thin and fearless, so she goes in to areas to get the cubs if they're not easily gotten. So there's a little male with it all hanging out. So that's Jason Hawley. He's our top fur bearer. He's working on his PhD on a bobcat collaring project, which we did a few years ago. So here's how they weigh the animals. And here's just different little cubs. This is that Heartland female. She was the first one that we recorded with 4, but this was quite a while back. So they are very cute. And once they've processed the mother, they'll put the young on her, and they'll eat, and some of them stray, though, so you got to kind of watch them. There's always that one kid. So this bear was kind of the queen of the forest for many years. She died in 2023. But was very successful with cubs. That's one of her dens. That's some of her cubs. So there they are. They're put back. She's still asleep, but sort of awake. And this is up in Avon on the hills. And this family goes to Florida in the winter, and this bear every year breaks under the porch and has cubs, and they ask the homeowners, and they say, that's all right. So no one's there. So the mother's always vigilant. So thinking of black bears as a big animal, no natural enemy here in Connecticut, but if you watch them eat, they're always looking around, even if they don't have cubs. Animals are very wary, even if they're at the top of the food chain. So you can see they're looking around. One day I woke up and she was nursing, but still being very vigilant. Here she's heard something, tells them to go up, and they're like, oh, do we have to? And this is what a bear can looks like. Basically, there's a basket inside there with a couple of dozen donuts, and the bear goes in there, and it's weighted so like a raccoon can't pull it. And when the bear pulls on the basket to get the donuts, the gate shuts down. And they have cameras on these cans, so particularly if it's winter or like now when it's really hot, those biologists will get those bears right away. If it's 4 in the morning and the temperature's fine out, and they might go at 7 to get them because they've just had a good feed, and typically they don't rattle around. Sometimes they just, they've eaten something and they just kind of wait to see what will happen. So this is one that just was kind of calm. This was one in West Hartford. Jason had to go up and tranquilize it. And there's just another handsome bear. So here's one way to tell if it's a male or not. So that's not its privates hanging between its legs. It's just a little piece of fur. So the males have this little piece of fur that hangs down. But very rarely when a big male has its legs apart, their fur goes way down on their side, so you really can't see it. But when they're young, you can. So tags right now, they've changed. So now what they're doing is they'll tag in sequence of, the first animal will be 015, 025. So that's how they do them, and each year has its own color. So this one, that was the old system. So these are just a few bears. This was the peking bear. She always peeked around trees. You saw that one. Again, my neighbor had this bird feeder up and never used it for like 15 years. I said, why don't you just take it off that tree? It's a good climbing tree. So she finally did, but it still had smell on it even after all those years. But you see the female hears something, so she's sending the young up. Now this is kind of fun. This little bear would go up the tree and then come down the branches. Now the mother's over to the right, not paying any attention. And I've never seen this in any other bear. And if you watch it, it's kind of kid-like. I'm not very good with video. Now in a minute, it uses its legs just like you see a kid climbing down off something. And of course, I'm inside shooting through a window, getting nervous about, is this a gummy bear? What happens when it hits the ground? But it hit the ground, ran right up to the tree, kind of looks at Mom, and then just goes up and goes again, and did it 2 or 3 times until she decided it was time to go. And she kind of huffed at it, and then it came down the trunk. It didn't mess around, so. So this shows you the GPS collars. So these were 3 sows who are now deceased that were near the Barkhamsted Reservoir. That's the reservoir where the castle or the gatehouse is. And so that's the Farmington River in between. So the purple is the one little mama that's, like I said, the queen of the forest. And you say she kind of stayed in her territory. And then the green one is the one you saw, the 2 different sizes. And then the other one is the Peking bear, who used to be on this side of the river, but one day little mama was in the woods with 2 males following her for a few weeks, and Scruffy came, and she didn't want her there, so she chased her up a tree. And she stayed in that tree for a day, and the next thing we know, she went to the west side of the Farmington River and never came back, only once. So, but that's what the data shows. These are signs of black bear. It's really fun to go outside after it snows because you can see all kinds of critter tracks. And there they do mark telephone poles. A lot of animals do what's called a direct register, so their hind foot will cross over where their front foot is. It's an economy of purpose of moving. It also makes them quieter. It's almost too like you're out snowshoeing and your dog follows you on the snowshoes so they don't have to break the trail, right? There's their pads, which I said they do lose them in the dens and grow new ones. I love to watch, their tracks in the snow. I had a friend out in California. I said, can you send me bear tracks in the sand? He sent these, and I said, you still carry a pocket comb? But anyway, so black bear skulls, as I said, they have 42 teeth. They do have canines, but if you look at the rest of their teeth, they're not really, those molars aren't that sharp, and they just use them for chewing plants and nuts and other things. If you're into anatomy, there's all this stuff. So they have dental formulas and all that. It's a little beyond me, but so here their claws, they continually grow, but they keep them short. They pull with their front feet and push with their hind, so their front claws do get worn down faster. There you can see a good picture of them. And you can find claw marks on trees a lot. That's natural scat. We call animal poop scat. You can see it's got different kinds of seeds in it. So again, they do use body language. They will vocalize. They will chatter their teeth if they get really nervous. So, if you hear a bear doing that, just back away, and get yourself to wherever you can go. And like I said, most of the time, they're not going to run after you and chase you down. But you never want to really run away from it. So this same guy with the sand and the comb sent me this. I said, he's a Hollywood producer. I said, that is not a bear. That's a man in a bear suit. But then he sent me other photos, and it was just a very handsome bear. So anyway, they do have a really prodigious sense of smell. Don't climb a tree. They climb better than you. Grizzlies climb trees, but they don't often because why would they? They're not really afraid of anything. So a lot of times they'll sleep in trees. You'll see that. this is little mama who chased Scruffy up the tree, and I got nervous that if she went on that limb, they both were going down, but she left and the other one stayed up there for almost a day. So again, don't run. Here's on my street. So this bicyclist came around the corner, saw a bear, and he did the right thing. He just waited, and the bear went on. Bear didn't even look at him, went on over. So I don't know what this guy's doing, but I wouldn't be following the bear. I'd just kind of let it go on. I couldn't resist that. So, and never let your dog loose if you know there's wild animals around. It's setting you up. It's setting the animal up for trouble, because they're just trying to protect themselves. So, again, we say, please, you don't need bird seed from April 1st till December 1st. In the spring, they're out looking for all kinds of food, so they're going to be smelling around your chicken coop. They're going to be looking in that old feeder that hadn't been full for a long time. They'll eat garbage, they eat cardboard, they eat everything, but they're teaching their young to do that. So it's really incumbent on us to make sure that our garbage, if they knock it over, just please pick it up and put it back. So again, here's a different bear with one of those tubs on its head. They can get into dumpsters if they're not secured. Again, 80% plants, 15% insects and grubs, and 5% animal matter. They sleep a lot, but they do raid bird feeders. They can get on your deck. They can break your deck. And that would be a conflict, but, you know, a human caused conflict, in my opinion. And they teach their young, you know, it looks cute, but it's not, because those young are going to grow up and they're going to be raiding bird feeders and hanging around yards and then looking in your windows and possibly coming in, and then they'll have to be euthanized. Here's a bear-proof garbage can. They try. You'll find these cans. They'll have teeth marks, claw marks. They work for grizzlies. There's a range of prices, but if you don't, I don't have a garage, but I don't generate a lot of stuff, so I put my, what I call live food, you know, the leftovers in my freezer until time to go to the dump. But if you have a bear can and you don't have a garage, it does work. That's a pie-eating bear. And hey, they've been known to get an iPhone if you just had that peanut butter sandwich and it was on your phone and you left it on that picnic table. So you would report this bear not because it's going to get that bird feeder. You can't tell, but the depth of field, it couldn't. But you report it because we do ask you to report them, as I said, because it gives the biologist a good sense of their movement. You report these not because they're doing anything wrong, but just because there's a sow with 3 cubs. I can tell you that cow's going to do a world of hurt on that yearling, because cows can have swivel hips. But I'd probably tell a rancher there was a bear there. So again, I'm not going to show you that one, but this person took a video and the bear picked out 1 apple and left. But if you're ever in that situation, you should be honking your horn and getting that bear out of there, even though it was polite and only took 1 apple, but you should really chase it away. So they do climb up onto your decks. This guy put out, I won't say the town, but he put birdseed in a bucket because he wanted to take a picture of a bear. So this guy goes out in his backyard with his young kid, and that's a yearling bear. And yearlings can be a little unpredictable because they're hungry, their mother's not helping them anymore, so sometimes they can get bold or afraid. So again, you don't run. This guy did the right thing. He's hiking. He sees the bear. Obviously, the bear's going to get some water, and he waits. And then I was told by my friend that the bear went on, and then they were fine. So we've talked about the bird seed. People say put hot stuff in it. That works on some bears it doesn't. But generally, just don't have it out in that time. We talked about all that. This was a kind of a cardboard garage door, and the guy had a garbage can full of birdseed right there, so the bear broke right in. So again, he had his garage door down, but if you do take your food in the back, you know, you can put ammonia on your garbage. It does help some. They don't really like that smell. This was at a parade in Avon last year, and people weren't even paying any attention to that bear. I mean, I don't know if somebody gave him a snow cone or what, but no one was even paying attention. It walked right down 44 during the right before the parade. That's at the Mount Washington Hotel, so they will show up anywhere. This was at, let me get the microphone, hold on. I don't know if this is true or not, but I think it is, because if you see what those Turons do, you know, trying to go up to a bison or a grizzly. So at Yellowstone, at their, you know, hotels, they give you this little thing to fill out when you leave. So these people wrote, so our visit was wonderful, but we never saw any bears. Please be sure that you let your bears out so guests can see them. This was a very expensive trip, not to see bears. So, I don't like to say that sometimes we're stupid, but sometimes we really are stupid about handling things with animals. And really and truly, if we all just did our part and tried to keep all these attractants away, then we wouldn't have the problems we have today. The old camping days, your toothpaste has sugar in it, so don't keep it in your tent. Even the clothes that you cook in, don't wear those in your tent because they smell like food. In the old days, this is how we hung our food, but now you can buy an actual bear can and take it with you camping. So now a lot of the guides out west are using bear spray rather than a gun. Now they'll have a gun with them, but they found that bear spray is more effective than you hoping you hit the grizzly in the right place and not wound it. You know, I mean, even a police will tell you the first time they might have ever had to shoot, and hopefully most of them don't, that they don't know what their adrenaline's gonna do, you know, at that point in time. So same with these guides, you know, but the bear spray will incapacitate a grizzly for over 30 minutes. So it's very effective. So Pepper, don't mind if I do. So anyway, you have to know, make sure you know where the wind is, you know, and how to use it. But obviously if you're hiking out in grizzly country, you definitely want it. And, you know, like I said, the biologists, when they go out, they do carry it. Probably never use it, but they do carry it. But I just, you know, so you can have that or mace, but you just have to be very careful with bear spray. So this is that document that's very helpful and interesting to read. These are just some pictures of bears. I put a ball in my yard, and my friend said I photoshopped that. I said, I'm not that good at Photoshop. And in the winter, so through the winter, the ball stayed in the yard, and then it was still there, and then it disappeared, and the next day I had a soccer ball. And I hardly have any kids, and my neighborhood's not many houses, so they do play, you know, with things in the yard. I got my bear dancing, but they actually were two siblings scuffling with each other. And that's a really big bear. That's probably over 500 pounds, that bear. And this one, when I saw it, it was during a hot summer, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is a long time ago. I said, that bear is just like dying of the heat, you know, but actually it's spreading pheromones when they stick their tongues out, animals. So that's what it's doing. So there's that one. That's a really big male and female, so the male will follow the female for quite a while until she's ready to mate. And again, rodenticide, it goes out to everything. You know, it's poisoning a lot of birds of prey. It's poisoning small animals that eat stuff. So please try to talk your neighbors and everybody into not using poison. So there, keep your eyes open. You never know when you'll see a bear. So I'll be happy to answer questions, and I do have handouts. So. Yep.